Yeah, and we'll just go ahead and get started. So Q&A number 7. Yeah, so anybody with any questions, anything at all, just go ahead and throw little hands up dealy on the uh I actually now that I've noticed, I'm actually not even sure how to do that myself. I don't know how I would do it on my end, but maybe it just doesn't show me because I'm the one hosting the thing. But that's a possibility too. So anybody with a question, go ahead and toss that hand up, and we'll get talking about it. Hope everybody's doing well. Glad to see everybody here today. As you can see, I'm still coughing like a maniac, and my voice still sounds like I'm uh, a homeless. Well, maybe I shouldn't make fun of anybody, but I just sound like hell. So that's Oh yeah, we got Timothy here. Let's see. Oh, it's in the reactions. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's cool. I can do. There you go. Thanks, Tim. That's exactly how you do it. Who knew? All right. Well, now I know for the future. For if I'm ever gonna, I'm gonna raise a question, raise my hand, and ask myself a question. Oh man, I don't think anybody has any questions. No kidding. Nobody at all. We're just here to talk. We can just hang. Oh, wait, that's okay. All right, we got Dan and Michael. All right, Dan, let's go ahead and start with you, man. And then if also just for the record, if anybody's having any, if nobody has any other questions other than that, we can also just talk Euros too. So that's fine. But go ahead, Dan. Actually,
Okay.
now we can hear that TV.
Oh, okay. Oh, the TV's loud. My bad. Just give me a sec, man.
Sure,
There we go.
sure.
Cool. Um, it was more of like an observation I've had
Yeah,
lately.
yeah.
So I've been playing around with a few different like materials for the basking spot.
Hmm.
And I've noticed that obviously dark materials, when you're taking like a surface temperature reading, heat up way more than a light colored basking
Yep.
rock.
Hmm.
But the bulb hasn't changed, so like the light intensity. I just kind of want to know your thoughts. You might not know, but
Yeah,
like the light intensity and technically like the heat output of the bulb above hasn't changed.
yeah,
But if someone's saying like you need a 48-degree basking spot,
yeah,
like let's say that's like 120 F.
yeah,
Um, like does it if you know that it's like 120 on the slate and then you swapped it out for a different material,
yeah,
technically like that's the same thing. So like, I don't know if you had just any like thoughts on it or anything. It's just something
yeah,
I've observed lately, and I
yeah,
was like, do I think that matters, or like
yeah.
am I making the enclosures too hot? Because like previously I've used quite light ones. I'm swapping to darker ones.
Right. No, it actually.
Um,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say like the reason I've done that is because my ambient temperature is higher with more animals, so I don't actually like need like loads of power to keep the like if anything I'm trying to keep them cooler.
Yeah,
But yeah, I just wondered.
yeah. This is a perennial problem. So sometimes, so yeah, obviously the material that you use for the basking site is gonna make a huge difference because some material absorbs more heat, some of it reflects more heat, some of it's going to radiate more heat, and so you have to make choices based on having a thermometer of some variety and reading the temperature. And again, this is also where you get a difference between surface temperature and air temperature. So you might be hitting the right surface temperatures, but if your air temperature is not right, then it's even harder, right? It's even more complex, and it's harder to, you're going to have to raise ambient like air temp levels in order to hit the proper gradients, even if the surface is really firing on all cylinders. And let's say if you put a piece of cork bark under, across as your basking surface, that's going to absorb heat differently, and it's going to radiate heat a little bit differently, and it's going to make a difference based on how quickly it cools off when the lights turn off versus how quickly it heats up when the lights turn on. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff to mess with in there. I have to toy around with that kind of stuff all the time. I opt to use usually dark colored slate here. So just unfinished tile or stone. And it varies a little bit just depending on what cage, which, I got so many different stones and pieces of material that it varies based on which cage and which light happens to be in that cage at this time, and what animal is in there, because my I might get away with using, say, a like 50 or 75 watt spotlight for a younger animal, that for a larger animal I either have to upgrade the bulb so it's a larger bulb and spreads out the beam more, or I might have to add more than one heat light just to achieve the kind of temperatures that I'm looking for. It's kind of like and then I have to change it based on season too. So, just recently, I went through my shop, and one of the things I had to do was I either had to add a basking site in some of the cages to sort of accommodate the drop in overall temperature here, or I had to raise or lower. So all my lights hang from, a shelf, like a shelf above the enclosures. And so the lights hang and they're just zip tied. The cord is just zip tying them to that shelf. And sometimes I have to raise or lower them because, in the summertime, I got to raise them up because otherwise it's generating way too much heat on the inside of the enclosure. And in the wintertime, I have to drop them down because it's not generating enough heat. And of course there's a balance there too, because then I have to make sure I don't drop it too low and have it too close to them, because, if it's a mercury vapor bulb, then it'll screw with them. It could hurt them if it's too close. You can get too much radiation and stuff like that. So there's a lot there. And it's going to be really different based on your region. So you in the being in England and having fully enclosed cages or mostly enclosed cages, that's going to change too. You probably don't have to use anywhere near the same kind of wattage bulbs that I do just to achieve the proper temperatures, especially now that you've added all those cages, as you mentioned. So that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, I typically use like a 50-watt halogen,
Yep.
and then I've got a deep heat projector that's like regulated on a thermostat to kind of, so like peak day, it spreads out the basking spot, and then like the DHP shuts off, and the 50 kind of just maintains the temperature from about 3 till lights off.
Nice.
Is kind of what works for me.
That's awesome.
Sometimes I'll use like an incandescent flood, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
How
I'm
it
thinking about
affects it and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've tried to come up with all kinds of different ways to try to think about like keeping costs down, or making more efficient the heat use at my shop. So like I even thought about, so I hang plastic on one side of the shop in the wintertime to help keep out cold air that comes in from outside on the side with my garage door. And I thought it would be interesting to even hang plastic over like that same plastic. It's like greenhouse plastic. And I thought about suspending it across the wall to wall on the shop over all the cages, and it effectively dropping the ceiling height by 10 feet or something like that.
That's a good idea.
Oh, it'd be great. It would be so nice to be able to hold in more heat and conceivably drop the wattage on the bulbs in the winter. But there's a couple of things. The first is it's probably against the fire code, so I'd probably get in trouble if I ever got inspected somehow. But then also, it's kind of like it's like a little bit dangerous for my taste, like unless I can ensure that plastic's never going to fall and land on a heat light and melt and ignite or something like that, then it kind of freaks me out. It's just a little sketchy. So I've even, there's other things that I'll do too. Like I'll take, melamine, like, these extra slabs of melamine that I have, and extra lids that I have for, like the Rubbermaid 55-gallon totes. I'll take the lids because I don't use them in any of the cages, and I'll lay those across some of the I'll lay that across some of the open tops of some of the cages just to help retain a little bit of heat, stuff like this. But and then the other problem is if I continue to expand and grow, then it's going to get even crazier, because then I have to find a way, as I increase the number of bulbs that I have, to try to, it's going to do the opposite in the summer. So then you have to mitigate it in the summer too. And so historically, what I used to do when I was at my family's home is I would change the wattage bulbs all the time. So I'd go from 75 or 100 watt bulbs in the sun in the wintertime down to 50 watt halos in the summertime. And even with that, it would still cook. The room would just bake because the ceilings were a lot shorter. So I mean, there's a lot of different things I'm thinking about doing. I also thought about just stretching that same plastic just across the tops of the shelves, like over, just over the cages, because even just that is going to hold in a little bit more heat. And it'd be kind of inconvenient for me. I'd have to kind of crawl under the plastic a little bit, but it would conceivably be more secure because I'm not stretching it wall to wall, and it would just hang over the tops of cages and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's like I get in these states of mind where I want to make changes, but at the same time, I don't want to be hasty. I don't want to mess with kind of it's kind of a balance between making sure that things work the way they're supposed to and the animals breathe the way I want them to, but also trying to, make changes to help my costs on my end and, reduce energy expenditure, all this stuff. It's kind of a fun game with legitimate monetary consequences. So it's kind of nuts.
Yeah, it's like high stakes gambling.
Yeah, real high stakes. Yeah, it's nuts. So it's been wild. Mm. All right.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you. Michael, let's go to you, sir. Let's go ahead and unmute your mic and let's what's going on? What's your question?
Yeah, Philip, thanks for hosting these, man.
Of
It's been
course.
really cool. So,
Yeah.
I've been keeping for a long time.
Yeah.
I've actually talked to you a few times just via Instagram, just kind of inquiring,
Yeah.
been listening to the podcast. I think I kind of fall into right now, the research mode. I'm more
Yeah.
of a generalist. Been keeping a lot of my life, but my parents were always like, don't have reptiles, don't have this. So I'm getting
Same.
into it a little bit later.
Yeah.
Uh, lived by myself for about 10 years and just like, and now I'm just like, I want to get into this. This is something that like I feel like it just keeps calling me back.
Yeah.
But I want to transition from that point to keeping to more of being like in the field, so to speak, of herpetoculture and
Yeah.
really getting into it. But
Yeah.
being in that generalist state, I'm trying to build a room. It's a smaller room, so it's going to be like, I don't know, roughly like 15 by 15,
Yeah.
just to start. But being in that generalist state, I want to keep some rainforest species,
Yeah.
some desert species. Like I've talked to you about the ornate Euros. There's
Yeah.
just something about those that like they just call to me. Like it's just like anytime I see one, I'm like, that's one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
Me too.
Um, yeah, it's just like it never gets old. Every picture you post, you think there'd be one I didn't. I was like, oh, that's amazing. But every one you post, I'm just like, oh, that's amazing.
I mean,
Um,
it's the same thing walking by the cages for me, man. I'm like, good God, every time.
Well, then you post the other ones too, and I'm new to Euros, so I've most of my studying and research, I've kept rainforest species. That makes sense. That biome makes sense in my head.
Yeah.
Um, but now I'm trying to transition to where one mixing rainforest and desert species. My question is the ambient temperature in that room going to be off whack? Because like trying to keep various species within the same space, and then two, creating that desert
Yeah.
microbiome. I typically like to go bioactive in the approach, but with Euros, like I've heard mixed reviews. Like people are like, oh yeah, use Bioduce Terra Sahara, that'll work. But then I see like the rock and the microclimates that you create with just kind of out of the box thinking. I'm like, is that better for the animal
Yeah.
than to kind of be selfish and be like, okay, this is going to look nice, but meet the needs of the animal? So I guess my questions are, the ambient temperature and then how best to create that microclimate.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so great questions. So the first one, the more, so it's really a question of scale. So if you've got a room and you have maybe one half of the room dedicated to desert, the other half of the room dedicated to something more tropical, it's gonna make a big difference. So I've found in my experience, it's not that hard when it's just a couple of cages that need to be cooking hot, because if you used fully enclosed cages with good ventilation, that's going to contain a lot of that heat, and it's not going to make as big of an impact on some of the other animals you have in the space. But I had to move a lot of my animals. Like I had the Uroplatus lineatus for a little while, the lined leaf tails. I had the Cuban anoles, and I found that they really didn't like the heat in the summer. I mean, they were, though they're heat tolerant to an extent, but being under that constant level of heat, not so much. So, but again, I was trying to do that in the same space where I had 100 euros. So there's just no way, like there's just that particular balance was not in the cards. Now, again, in a smaller room, you probably won't have some of the same issues. But it's gonna depend a little bit on season, and it's gonna depend a little bit on how big you go. So the more euros you have in the space, the less likely you are to be able to keep it outside of the parameters for them and inside the parameters for something more tropical. So either you can partition your room if you wanted to, which is something I've considered doing, or you may just have to do it separately altogether. But again, if you only got a couple of cages, maybe not too big of a deal. As to the question about bioactive stuff, I still have never seen anybody keep Euros bioactive in a way that actually makes sense. Um, I I don't think it's necessarily impossible, but I do think it's going to be really, really difficult. And it's probably going to take a lot of trial and error. And you're probably going to have, because the kinds of things that that you're going to be keeping in a bioactive enclosure have diametrically opposed needs to the Uromastyx. And unless that enclosure has sufficient soil depth, so the animals that are your cleanup crew and your smaller organisms that share the space with the Euro have the space to go way, way, way down into some soil, I think it's pretty unlikely. And then you encounter the problem of the animal burrowing down into that deep soil and getting, kind of messing up the climate there. I don't know. I'm not convinced that it can be done just yet. I've never seen anybody do it. I've heard a lot of people claim it can be done and do it with like Ackie monitors, but with Ackies, it makes more sense for various reasons. Ackies are much more humidity tolerant than Euros. And even though they have some similar daytime high temperature requirements, uh, I don't know, people just get away with a lot more with monitors. The other difference is the content of the food that you feed the Euros is going to be a lot more limited in some regard than the food that you feed your Ackies. So you're getting a somewhat less nutrient rich fecal matter. I mean, obviously they're both nutrient rich in their own way, but like Ackies are eating so much and shitting so much that it can sustain a group of smaller organisms a lot more easily than the Euros, because sometimes the Euros don't shit at all for months if they're going through winter cooling. So you might find yourself having a hard time keeping up the nutrient input into your bioactive system, right? So I think it's a little difficult. And again, I kind of encourage people to try different stuff, but just as of yet, I haven't seen anybody do the bioactive thing for a Uromastyx in a way that works. And it's kind of becomes a trade-off where it's like, how much time do you want to spend trying to figure out how to get the system to work when you could spend more time making sure the animal is happy, healthy, is doing what it needs to do, and get success that way, as opposed to, having to sort of balance the needs of that kind of closed system or mostly closed system again, along with the needs of the Euro. So another way I've heard this said, and in a way I think it makes sense to describe it, is natural systems can be emulated, but they're very difficult to replicate and they're very difficult to scale. So you might be able to emulate a natural system in a contained space, such as a vivarium or a terrarium, but there might be some, like there might be some systems, such as a desert ecosystem, that might be a lot harder to emulate on a smaller scale. You might need a lot more space and a lot more input. But I should also say that my expertise, or my experience rather, with with creating bioactive systems is quite limited. I've done it with my anoles and my leaf tails, and that was fun, and I love it. I love having, low maintenance enclosures and stuff like that. But I don't have a sufficient amount of experience to say exactly how it may or may not work in a desert terrarium. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, that really confirms some of the research I've been doing, which is,
Mhm.
you know, it's, I guess that's the difficulty between, doing that research and getting that general information, then having that applied knowledge,
Mhm.
and, try to make sure you do sufficient research to
Yeah.
take care of the animal, to make sure
Uh,
that it thrives. But then also at some point you have to get applied knowledge,
mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
just do the thing. So,
Yep.
I try to balance that. Um, so I guess the way that it looks is like you use kind of like a rock substrate mixed with a little sand. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yep. It's just sand and gravel, and it doesn't matter what kind, right? So as long as you're getting stuff that's, as low dust content as possible, because dust is not good to breathe in for anybody, or anything. And obviously, the better ventilation you have, the less problematic dust becomes, but it can still be a real thing. So I use mostly just, I'll get play sand from wherever, and then I'll get pea gravel from wherever, and I'll use that. Now, to a certain, so in recent years, I've actually just opted towards the gravel without any sand. But that's just because, with the way I keep, um, I have, Christ, like 100 cages, right? And with 100 cages, even if you're only putting a little bit of sand, that's a ton of dust. That's so much particulate matter in the air. And I don't want to breathe that in. And I don't want the animals to breathe that in either. And they do very well just on gravel. Does it's heavy, which is a problem. And it definitely, if I had, sliding glass front cages or front opening cages or stacked cages, I might not use the gravel the same way because it's so heavy. You might as well just line the whole bottom in stone because that's what you're doing. But the sand is a problem too, just because it either grinds in the run for the glass in a sliding glass front. In my case, it creates a lot of excess dust. So the trade-offs is, again, the gravel's heavy, but then the gravel also, it can be a little bit more difficult to clean. It's not really that big of a deal though. It just means that every time they go to the bathroom, I'm pulling out the turd and a little bit of gravel when I clean up, but I don't care that much. It's not really that big of a deal. The animals also seem to like the gravel, and if you look at wild photography of Uromastyx in their natural habitat, the vast majority of them are on some kind of hard packed gravel, that looks like it's a little bit mixed with dirt, but it's really hard packed. You get a few that are observed on like a sandy kind of loamy bedding out there, but that's mostly like the Egyptians and Flava fasciata and some of these others. But even then, they clearly would rather. I mean, they gravitate towards stones. So I don't want to just leave them on sand specifically. It's a little too chaotic.
Yeah, yeah. I've started to look at a little bit of that natural photography as well, and Egypt specifically, and just every picture I see, I kind of seeing like desert scrubland where
Yep.
there's a little bit around, mostly rocks.
Yep.
Uh, lots of crevices. Um,
Yeah. Lots of crevices. Yeah, they're like a chuckwalla. They're like
yeah,
a North African and Middle Eastern chuckwalla for sure. And you go out there to where chucks are, and yeah, it'll get kind of sandy in some places, but for the most part, it's stone, grip and stone. Um, and it's probably better for them ergonomically too. It's like for the same reason I tell people not to use millet as a bedding, um,
mm,
because when they walk on it, it just sinks. You know what I mean? Like think about if you as a person had to walk on sand like forever, like just your whole life, you're walking on sand. How difficult is it to walk on sand? Like it's especially loose sand. It's really annoying. And yeah, maybe conceivably for a workout, it's good, but to do that constantly, it's probably not a good thing. And so I think it's kind of a similar thing with the Euros. So if you can give them something that resembles more of what they would get in the wild, you're probably just gonna have something better all around. And Yeah, there's always trade-offs, right? There's no perfect bedding, unfortunately. I really wish there was, because it's some kind of trade-off, whether it's dust, whether it's, smell or having to replace it with a lot of regularity, whether it's the weight of the substrate you're using, whether it's difficult to clean up. I mean, there's so many things to consider that you generally have to choose what's best for you in conjunction with what works well for the animal. And so, I mean, I know guys who used to keep Uromastyx on Sani chips, which are like it's aspen bedding. It's just aspen wood shavings, and they bred on that. It was fine. It didn't bother them at all. But again, it's like that has to be cleaned really regularly, and it doesn't have a lot of traction. So it's just like, oh man, there's a lot to choose from there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man, I absolutely. I appreciate everything. It's just,
Yeah.
that's what I mean is everything's a trade-off, and
Yeah.
you know, trying to do what's best for the animal while also trying to, like if I don't have to spend $300 on substrate that's not going to work right, then
Yeah.
there's a trade-off there too. It's like, trying to make sure that I'm hitting all those facets there. That microclimate post you just made,
Yeah.
where I saw everything stacked. Are you adhering that at all? Because I mean, they look like pretty powerful animals, just
Oh
to me.
yeah. Yeah, so they are super powerful, but no, I don't adhere it at all. What I will do, because I don't like the glue, because I know people who have done that, but that does a few things. One is it makes it really difficult to get in there if you have to get the animals out, and you're creating a really heavy piece of furniture that you have to try to move around in and around the cage. So I don't ever glue anything together. What I do though is I stack things. Let's say there's something that's a little wobbly. I'll find a way to make it so it doesn't wobble at all. And then I'll lay heavier stuff on top of that. And then I'm testing all the time, like as I'm assembling stuff in the enclosure, I'm testing it and pushing on it and shaking it around, because if I can't move it, then they can't, you know, with maybe the exception of the Egyptians, but the Egyptians, they don't. I have less in terms of structure in their cage, because they can move it, but also if they do move it, it's not gonna hurt them. Like it's not gonna fall on them. Whereas with some of the other species, or even if it did, the Egyptians, I don't have anything heavy enough to hold them down. They're too giant. Whereas like the ornates, the Yemenensis, they'll get there's stuff in there that if it fell on them, it could legitimately trap and kill them. But no, I don't adhere it. I just make sure that it's all wedged up. So let's say I'm stacking like 3 roofing tiles, like in the post that you're referring to, the one I just put up on microclimate. That has 3 different roofing tiles stacked on top of each other, but I assemble them as such so they don't wobble at all. When I set them down, I move and adjust them until they are totally stable, and then I lay other stuff on top of it to increase that stability. And if I have to, I'll wedge stuff underneath it as well to ensure that even if it went unstable, it couldn't fall on anything. There wouldn't be any way for it to fall. So that's how I do that. And part of that is done by making sure that when you're placing stuff at the bottom of the enclosure, it's not resting on any loose substrate, because they'll dig underneath that, pull all that substrate out, and stuff can fall on them then. So the foundation starts on the flat, bare bottom of the cage, and substrate is laid in around it, or most of the time. Or I'll move substrate out of the way so stuff can go directly on the bottom of the enclosure and not be wobbly or dangerous. Does that make sense?
Yeah, using the substrate essentially to weight it down, then building from there and
Too.
testing it yourself. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. You got it. Right on. Anything else, Michael, or there's no pressure at all, but I just want to make sure that you get anything answered that you might need.
No, I've got some other questions, but I certainly don't want to monopolize the conversation
Oh
either.
no,
So, if anyone else wants to ask some questions, and I can circle back around later.
sure.
I'm trying to pick up everything that I can. So when other people ask questions, I'm like, oh, I just didn't quite think about it that way.
Yeah, yeah, no worries. That's fine. Yeah, no problem at all. We can go on to another. There's 2 more folks, and then if you have more, just throw that hand up again, and it'll put you back in line, and we'll just keep going. Okay.
Absolutely appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, Ralph, how you doing today, man?
Okay, Phil, how are you?
Not too bad, thanks. What can I do for you today?
Hey, man, I just want to say thanks for doing this. And, man, your animals are the best in the business, especially the ornate. So,
Hey,
uh,
thank you.
yeah, man, I really don't have no trouble. I mean, everything's going great.
Nice.
The one's been down for 4 weeks, and the other one's been down for going on 3 weeks,
Oh
and the other
man.
one's still up every day. Having a blast feeding it, and it just won't go down. So I'm not forcing anything. I got three quick questions.
Sure.
And the first one is that um, I put food in, like I feed every day, right? And
Yeah.
I feed in bowls, and then I take everything out when I go to put them to bed. So
Okay.
the ones that's been down, I put food in there every day too.
Yeah.
Do you think I keep doing that, or since they're not coming out and probably won't be out for a while,
Yeah.
we'll wait to see, or wait till I see them come out, then start putting food back in because it's kind of just a waste,
Yeah. 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 Definitely. You don't need to keep feeding them. What I'll do sometimes is I'll just put food into a cage with an animal that I know is down, and I'll leave it dry in the cage. I'll just let it dry out there, because then sometimes when they come back out, you'll see that they've picked at some of that food. Or you can leave the bowl empty and either A, wait until you see them out, or B, wait until you see that they've pooped somewhere. Because if
Okay.
they've pooped somewhere, that means they've come out, right? And
Yeah.
usually if that happens, then I'll start throwing in little bits of food, but just a little bit. And I'll
Yeah.
wait until that food starts disappearing. And if it does, then I'll add more if I feel I need to. Usually they'll let me know, they'll let you know somehow, whether it's through being out and active and being visible, whether it's through pooping and you haven't seen them out at all, and all of a sudden there's a turd in the cage and you're like, oh, he must have come out. Or they'll just show themselves one day out of nowhere. That's also how it can happen.
Yeah, that's
So
what I was going to do, is just wait till if I seen one out, because I've been
yeah.
putting the food in now. It's just a little bit of a waste, I thought. I mean, I put it
Yeah.
in, and hours later I take it out and throw it in the garbage. So it's like, what I mean, because I just feed
Yeah.
fresh every day. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. You can also, you don't have to take out the food um that they don't eat. You can let that dry out and they'll eat that too.
okay.
You definitely don't have to take it out. It's okay to give them greens that have dried out. It actually is probably really good for them. So
Okay.
you can definitely do that, so that way you maybe aren't having to spend as much on food.
Okay. Next quick question is, I have the one permanent in the 4x2, and then I ordered two more from Custom Habitats 4x2. But now
Nice.
they haven't come in yet. It's going to be a little while, so I'm just going to wait till they all wake up from brumation to switch them two over.
Yeah.
When I do that, do you have any suggestions? Because it's a shame that I got to switch them over, but
Oh, it's
I'm
okay.
getting I'm getting better enclosure. So just when after they get up and
Yeah.
spring and summer starts to come in, just go ahead, and when I'm ready, just grab them out and just put them in the next cage, and they'll be.
Yes, I would say another thing to do is to make sure that when you put them in the new enclosure, put try to use a lot of the same material from the old enclosure in the new one. You want them to be able to smell themselves in the space. That'll help them feel much more secure and a lot less nervous. That's one thing I do all the time. Like if I'm moving an animal, I'll take
Yeah.
a lot of its furnishings from the cage where it's already been, and if I find feces from the
Mhm.
animal in that cage, I'll put them in the new cage and leave it in there for a couple of days, because they actually, that was something that came up from, I was already doing that anyway, but it came up from the conversation with on this last podcast that I did with Dr. Kelsey Chapman. She was citing research that showed that animals had lower like blood cortisol levels um when they had when the cage smelled like them, something along those lines. I'm probably
Yeah.
butchering that description a
That,
little, but yeah.
yeah, that's what I was going to do. I mean, I was going to just put, I use a lot of like pavers and stuff, and I build hides out of that, and that's
Yeah.
how and then I have a lot of their uh, custom habitats. I have, what I want to say, they're, I forget what kind of I got anyways, for their hides and stuff. So I was just going to put like fresh sand in, and fresh play sand and fresh gravel, pea gravel. That's
Yeah.
kind of the way I do it, the same as you do. And then I was just going to put their old hides in without washing it, and really not washing the bricks or anything either. And
Yeah.
just to switch them over. Okay, next quick question is,
Yeah.
I kept Leachianus and Chihuahuas for like 6-7 years,
Yeah.
and I still have a lot of brand new big cork rounds that I never used, and I know that they like to climb ornates and stuff. So like if I with the 4 foot high walls and stuff, I was thinking of putting some of them cork rounds in and then burying them into the gravel and sand and then putting them, into the corner and stuff so they could actually go in there and climb on that stuff. I mean, is there a problem with cork bark with them or?
No, that's great. I use cork also. I just don't
Okay.
use it as much anymore, only because it's just like on a large scale, it's kind of difficult because it can get expensive and it's hard to clean. But
Yeah.
that's totally fine. Yeah, they love it. And you can do a lot more with that cork too. So you can submerge it into the bedding. You can I've taken cork and like adhered it to the walls at a slant. Mates love that. You probably even hang a cork tube from the ceiling of the cage. Even if it moves around, if they can reach it and grip it with their claws, they'll probably climb it and probably enjoy that quite a bit because they're excellent climbers. Excellent climbers.
Okay. And then I just wanted to, you don't have to answer this question because I'm not sure if you do that or not, but I know you're having this Friday posting more animals in, and you said you're having some nice stuff at Christmas. Just to be generalizing, are you going to have any more like sexed kind of like ornates? That's
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it's going to be, I'm going to have three species for at least another 3 or more months. So
really?
More sexed ornates, sexed Thomasai, and there will be both sexed, probably mostly sexed princeps too. I don't know exactly how many yet because the problem is with some of them, if I'm going to offer them sexed, I have to wait till they're actually sexed, right? So I got to let them grow. So I don't know exactly how many, but there's definitely going to be more of all three, which is really cool. And then I'm not 100% sure. So there's definitely going to be pairs and sexed males of Ornata. And there's going to be more males and I don't know exactly how many, but at least a couple pairs of Thomasai that are sexed, 100% sexed. But it's also a challenge for me because I have to keep a lot of Thomasai this year because most of my adults are getting pretty old. So I got to make sure I hang on to a sufficient number of animals to keep that colony going.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just interested in ornates and especially the males, and I'm kind of for a blue phase at this time. So that's and hey, I just want to have a chance, just like anybody else. I don't want no inside or anything.
Oh yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, no, it's not like that at all. It's
I just wanted to. I'm going to let you get going here. I just wanted to thank you again for all you do. And I had one other comment I wanted to make. And anybody living in Texas, you can ignore this, but I need everybody to say a little prayer tonight for my Philadelphia Phillies. All right? Because I'm down towards Philadelphia, so
yeah, that's awesome.
All right. Hey, all right, man. You have a good one, Phil. Thank you.
Thanks, Ralph. You too. Thanks for the questions and the support, man. I appreciate it a lot.
You bet. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Dan. What up, man?
And I was just going to say, when you were talking about substrate and like traction earlier, I've actually found this sand over here, which is like it took me a while to find the right one, but it's like a sharp sand, like a builder's sand.
Yeah.
And it obviously like it's a little bit moist in the bag, and when you put it in, it sets like hard, so it's got like a solid surface. I find that works quite well for me in terms of like sand. Although I've been through quite a few different brands and most of them have been really dusty, like really bad. But there is one I found that's actually okay.
Oh man, dude, this is like the perpetual problem of my life. I mean, I've been doing this forever. There's a depending on where you are in the world and even in the country, you just get varying degrees of different types of sand and sediments available to you, partially because of like, local and regional differences, and partially because of just obviously different access to different quarries and different sediments, right? So here in Colorado anyway, there's actually you can get it on Amazon too. There's a brand of potting soil sand that's meant for like cactuses and stuff, and it's called Mosser Lee, and the problem is you can only get it in a 5-pound bag, and it's expensive, but it's perfect. It's virtually dust free. Like, but the problem is it's just really, really damn expensive. Hang on just a second. I'm sorry, my cat is literally opening the door and he needs to get out. So let me just let him out.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Just maybe 5 seconds, guys. Come here, cat. Get out of here, Zeus. Go on. Yeah. All right. Sorry about that, guys. That little bastard, I mean, he genuinely knows how to open doors. So he's like you guys know that funny raptor Jesus meme, to pray for your sins. He's learned to open doors. Oh man. Sorry, but anyway, there's a brand here in the US called Pavestone sand, and it's kind of like what you're talking about, where it comes kind of moist, and when you put it in the enclosure and you pack it down really hard, it makes like a crusty, and it's got a lot of big pebbles and gravel in it.
Yeah.
It's really cool, but the problem is it is really, really dusty, and that's part of what makes it set so hard, and so that's a real problem. And I don't really know. It's just such a super challenging concern. Go on, dog. Go, doggy. Now my dog's here. I got a lot of animals, but like the choosing the perfect bedding is such a perennial problem. I mean, I still think that the rock on a roll stuff that I've been using for different purposes is so perfect. I just can't use it at the moment because it's hard to get enough of it to cover the bottoms of the pool.
Okay, yeah.
When I was at my mom's place, I had rectangular boxes. So it was really, really easy to cut a square that fit the bottom. But I can't do that with the pools, and they will get under the rock on a roll, and then it's a pain in the ass. So I just switched back. I mean, some of the cages still have it to a certain degree, where I'll lay like a big slab of the rock on a roll across half the cage, and then the other half is gravel and sand. And I think it's probably good just to change it up once in a while, but man, it's I just wish I could keep them outside in Arizona somewhere, man. If I wish I could do outdoor, but then that would present a whole nother host of problems. So maybe that's
yeah.
not anyway.
With the rock on a roll, I've actually got some. I bought some that I've been
Nice.
sort of like meaning to use.
Yeah.
So when you're cleaning that, if you've got like loads of rocks on, are you like pulling it out, or are you just sort of like picking the poop up and giving it like a little bit of a scrub kind of thing?
Exactly, just like that. Yeah. And you could probably get away. So one of the things I thought about doing when I was using it exclusively was I thought it'd be really fun to use like a steam cleaner on it. You know what I mean? Because you blow the steam on it and then wipe it up, and that would probably clean it up very, very well.
Yeah, the steam would probably kill like a lot of the germs and stuff as well.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe if you use the steam cleaner, you could probably get away with doing it in a way that like helps the humidity, like you do it in the morning or in the evening or something, and it spikes the humidity for a while. So it's probably a good thing. But I don't know. I haven't gone that far yet. I mean, man, the thing is, you guys are catching me at a time when there's so many upgrades I want to make to what I do here at the shop, but I can't yet. I just don't have. I just don't have the funds to do it. So it's going to be a couple of years before I can make some of the upgrades I want to, but one of those is like just choosing a better substrate. That's one of the things I really do. So we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool stuff.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no problem. All right, Michael, back to you, sir.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button there.
All right.
Yeah, man, I really empathize with that last statement of just saying, you want to do a lot. As I get more into this, as I, listen to the Project Herpetoculture podcast, you guys keep me company on my way to work and home. But
nice.
I'm just like, I want to do this, I want to do that. Probably starting with a few knolls, trying to get into that because they lay an egg a week. I mean, there's something to be said for that. But then, over the summer wanting to get that those Uromastyx set up. But I want to build it now because I think I've talked to you. I'm using a 125 for one of them.
Yep.
An old tank that I'm going to set up, and then I'm going to build just a custom now that's a plan for the other. see which one I like better, probably eventually convert them both to whatever works out the best.
Yeah.
But listen to the PH podcast. It's funny because you guys talk to everyone, like a lot of people who were in aquascaping in the fish hobby
Yeah.
and transition over. Well, that's me too.
Oh, wild, crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've kept fish for 25 years, and I got my first reptile, and it's like I don't know how to describe it other than an addiction, right? Like it's just like you
Totally.
get that first one, and you're just like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever done.
So awesome.
I love fish, but I want to transition to this. But I guess where that's taken me is, so when I hear the place sand, like something common in fish keeping is you spray down the sand,
Yeah.
you drain out all the water, and then you put the sand in there to keep the dust down because dust plumes in a fish tank doesn't look very good.
Yep.
Um, is that kind of same strategy for putting it in with the Euros if you have time to let it dry?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You don't even have to let it dry, honestly. You could rinse that sand out, get the dust out, and then put the sand in the enclosure while it's still wet and just let it evaporate. And you wouldn't be a big deal to put the Euro in there. I mean, unless it's going to be wet for like 4 days straight, then maybe don't do that. But if it's gonna dry out in a couple of days, it's totally harmless to let the Euro be in that. It's not going to kill them at all. A little bit of humidity is not going to hurt them slightly, but yeah, you can definitely excuse me. You can definitely do it that way. I've done it. It's just so time consuming, or at least it can be. You just buckets of sand, put the hose in the bucket and just let all that dust drain out, right? Well, that works, but if you're, again, in my case, if I had to do that, it would take me a month to get all the sand rinsed out, and the water bill would be through the roof. It would be chaos for me. So, but yes, you can definitely do that, and that's totally fine. It's great. As a matter of fact, I've gone into a lot of fish stores just to look for bedding because, I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can get at like fish specific shops where, whether it's stone that's perfect for setting up in a reptile cage, whether it's different types of wood that are great for setting up in a reptile cage, where it's different kind of bedding that's really great for setting up in a reptile cage. There's another place actually called Jurassic Sands or Jurassic Sand, and they're a quarry. Man, I don't remember exactly. I think it's Jurassic Sand, but it's like, let me see if I can find it really fast. But it's this awesome company that Jurassic Sand. Yeah, and yeah. Jurassic Sands. And if you go under their shop and you go Sandbox Play Sands, they have this stuff called Jurassic Riverbed Play Sand that is like, I love this stuff. It's like a little bit thicker, gravelly. Here, I'm gonna put the link in the chat right here for everybody. This sand is great. This is really good shit. I love this sand. And if I could get this in bulk, I mean, I guess I can. I technically can get it in bulk because it's not that bad. It's not that expensive, but it's awesome. It's perfect. And it's like, it looks beautiful, and it's like, it's natural sand. And you can see when you look at if you look at that link that I just sent, you can zoom in on it and you can see that it's just soft, round little granules of sand. It's perfect. It's really good. I like that stuff a lot too because it is no dust at all. None. Zilch, which is really good.
Aesthetically, it looks really great too.
It does. Yeah, it looks really, really good.
That was me a few weeks ago, man. I just couldn't shake that sickness, man. I
I
teach and I couldn't talk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I teach too, but teach jujitsu and oh, Jesus Christ. No. Sorry. Somebody was trying to call me. My bad. But I've had this cough for over a month and it won't go away. I just can't get it to go away. It's driving me insane. But I love that sand. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to reorder some now. Like, I mean, not right this second, but soon, because it's just so good. It's perfect. And the fact that it's dustless is the shit. That stuff is absolutely incredible. So actually, if any of you guys get it, you should let me know. Just kind of let me know as far as if you guys enjoy it and what you guys think of it, and take some pictures and send me if any of you get it, because I just love that stuff. It's perfect. Anyways, sorry, Michael.
Oh, no worries. I'm I enjoy the content, man. I'm just here to learn. Like that's where I'm at. Like, you guys, as keepers, as herpetoculturists, you guys are the experts. I'm just trying to get in. Like, I'm just trying to break my way in, right?
Me too.
Oh, you're doing a lot better job of it than I am. But uh,
Yeah.
but man, so one thing I was thinking about, and I try to think of a lot of theories before I, and test stuff before I put an animal in an enclosure, but was actually stacking like 2 or 3 bricks on each side and putting a piece of slate over it,
Yeah.
adhering that, and then digging out some of that sand and pea gravel
Yeah.
to give them like a deeper hide.
Yeah.
Now the question is with them not liking humidity. Now I've read some stuff that maybe they like just a little bit of humidity and just one of
Definitely.
their hides.
Yes.
Just put a little spag moss at the bottom, just not
Um,
saturating it, but
I would
what's the best way to
actually,
keep that humidity?
yeah, so I would leave out the moss because the
Okay.
problem with the moss is they'll eat that.
Okay.
It's not going to kill them or anything. It's just not ideal. So,
Yeah.
what I do is you can either make like a humid hide if you want. A lot of people do this where they take like actually if you look in the post, the microclimate post that I
Mhm.
made, if you look at the box that's sitting in front, it's a 10-gallon Husky Rubbermaid tote with a
Yeah.
tube. Now that's a nest box, but it's the exact same thing that people use as uh humid hide. And what they do is they fill it with I'll usually fill it with a mix of sand and cocoa fiber. And because the cocoa fiber holds moisture and is lightweight, and the sand helps hold the burrow and hold like a little bit of firmness. And they really like that a lot. And now that makes a little just a mimic humid hide for them. And the reason you would do that is because in the wild, they will go into burrows, or at least a lot of them will. Not all of them, but a lot of them will go into burrows. And when that happens, the burrow humidity is much higher. It's closer to 75%. And that makes a difference in their overall health. Now, you don't need to offer that to have a healthy Euro, but it probably wouldn't hurt. And but there are other ways to do it as well. So if you don't want to go all the way as far as making the humid hide, you can also just put sand. You can spray underneath a hide a couple times a week, and that's totally fine also, because it'll act as the same kind of thing. It'll spike the humidity for a few days, and then it'll dry out, and then you can re-wet it. But what I've found is even though I do that pretty regularly here, I spray down a lot of the cages and I'll spray the hides. A lot of my animals, when I spray the hides, will leave that hide and go to a different one. You know what I mean? They're just like, screw this. I hate this. But I do have some that will actually drink standing water too. So there's definitely nothing wrong with that. But it's just going to depend a little bit on your local region. What part of the country are you in, Michael?
Illinois.
Illinois. Okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be more humid there, so I might not even bother. You know what I mean? I might just allow some of the natural spikes in humidity that happen in the morning and in the evening. Let that come into your cages or come into your room. Like open up the windows, have a fan blowing that humidity in. That's one good way to do it too. Sometimes when it rains here in Colorado, I open up all the doors and I have fans blow the air into the shop, so it raises the humidity for a little while. That's good to do too.
Yeah, and then if I did want to just build that nesting box, use something like the Husky, saturate the cocoa fiber
Yeah.
just a little bit,
Yeah, you're
or
not.
spray it.
Just keep it like damp enough so it clumps when you hold it, but not so much that it's like you squeeze water out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that bounds to it.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah,
got it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
awesome, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, appreciate it. All right, Tim. Hey, how you doing, man?
Hey man, how's it going?
Very good, very good. Thanks. How about yourself?
Oh, not bad. Sorry about that cough, man.
Uh,
That's the worst. I'd put money that it's RSV.
oh yeah, no, totally. I think so too. Yeah, that's what my doc thinks as well. Yeah, yeah.
But
It's gonna
they
take a
did
while.
they did studies on it. Kids cough for like 3 weeks every day, and then cough most of the time for like 6 weeks when they get that. It's
Oh,
bad for you.
man. What a pain
So
in the
sorry, man. That
It's
sucks.
all right. Thanks though. Appreciate it, man.
I just had a couple of quick questions.
Sure.
So it's been great substrate talk.
Yeah.
Just kind of hearing everybody's thoughts on it and your thoughts, obviously. So I opted, at least with a young animal, just to do a slate tile bottom.
Okay.
What do you got? What are your feelings on that instead of sand, or just kind of leaving that so that he doesn't get a chance to dig is my only problem with it.
Yeah, no, I think that's okay. I don't think that's bad at all. I have also used just a straight up slate tile bottom as well. The animals do great on that too. If anything, they might even do a little bit better in some ways because when they scratch around, they wear down their nails. So that's also very good for them. But you could also, if you want, I've noticed that like the Euros, everybody says, oh, they're burrowers. They burrow. It's like, well, some of them, obviously, like the Egyptians and the Flavies and, some of these others, but some of these rock dwelling ones, I don't know how much burrowing they're doing. They might dig a nest to lay eggs, but they're spending all their time in crevices, like a lot like a chuckwalla, or at least they seem to be anyway. So, will it be good for them to be able to dig a little? Sure. But do you have to provide that constantly in the enclosure? No, I don't think so. So if you wanted to, you could put a box in there for them to scratch around in if you wanted. You could experiment with if you have a tile slate bottom, just choose one part of the enclosure and throw loose bedding on that side. See what they do. If they want to dig in it, cool. If they don't, not a big deal. I do that sometimes too. So a lot of my cages will have that rock on a roll on the bottom, and then I'll throw a bunch of gravel and sand on top of it, and they'll screw around in that and jack around and be wild. But no, you definitely don't have to. You don't have to give them something to dig in there. I don't think they're going to be harmed by not being able to dig, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I did the whole like humid hide thing.
Yeah,
Everyone did it once, ignored
yeah,
it for months, and so I took
yeah.
it out. I was like, this he doesn't want this.
Right, right. Now I'll tell you, the ones that I have that do use it though are my Yemenensis. They definitely use that humid hide, but I mean, even then, it's kind of a select ones. It's a lot of the females who used it as a nesting spot. They go in there and use it, but they don't. The males aren't going in there and hanging out, and the males. I mean, well, some of them will, but it's kind of complicated. I think there's going to be. I think maybe in a little bit in maybe another decade's time, we might think a little bit differently about some of the individual Euros as species. Because like one thing I'm going to probably transition to at some point is treating my ornates and Yemenensis and Ocellata more as arboreal, right? Because if you look at where they come from in the wild, it's just like a chuckwalla. So they're up on huge rock outcroppings and boulders and piles of rock. It's not fair to think of them as like a terrestrial species as we traditionally think of them. Whereas Flavi, Aegyptia, yeah, they'll use boulder piles and stuff, but for the most part, they're on flat ground. Thomasai, flat ground. They don't do a lot of climbing, even if they kind of can, So again, this is all stuff that if I had $10 million, I'd be building a dream facility and having all this stuff mapped out in a much more clear way. But yeah, does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, it's interesting to think about doing a more vertical
Yeah.
tank for an ornate. It's interesting to think about. And then the other question I had is surrounding brumation. How much have you seen so mine went down 3 weeks, didn't come out totally normal, not worried about that.
Yep.
Then he came out for like a week every day, ate.
Yeah.
And like 4 days he's out, now he's back out, and then he was down for like 4 days.
Yeah.
Nice back out. Is that pretty typical? In, out, in, out. I figured, but always
Yes,
good to hear the experience.
And the bastards will trick you because you'll be like, oh, here we go. He's going to be out now, finally. And then they'll go back in for a week. And you're like, you little shit, get out here.
The amount of time I've referred to mine as a little bastard or a little asshole is pretty significant.
Every time, every damn time. That's what I like. I have some of the names, like, so I don't name every single animal, but I do. If I don't give them like a kind of like a pseudo name, I'll give them like a code, And so for some of the ornates, I've got, ones that like FGF1, and FGF1 stands for like friendly green female one. And then maybe, there'll be another one where it's SGF1, where it's spazzy green female one, or like jackass male 7 or like, grumpy blue import or something like that. So it's, yeah, some of them have names that just describe their jerky personalities.
I
Yeah.
love it. I like it about him. He's kind
Yeah.
of a jerk. He looks at me like he's a jerk sometimes. I'm like, all
Hell
right,
yeah.
cool. We're good.
And I'll tell you, I'm telling you, a spicy Uromastyx is a healthy one. When they're all floppy puppy dogs and they're tame as hell and they don't want, they just want to be everybody's friend. Nope. Nope. That's not good. I don't want that. I mean, it's not bad. I get it. Like people want to have their pets and they want them to be super tame and that's fun. But I don't want that. I want mine to have a little, like when I pick them up, I want them to like, like jerk around. I'm like, yeah, yeah. Hell yeah. They flex on me. I love it. I think that's what they should do in my
Yeah,
but
I showed you that video of mine just hissing away pissed off.
yeah, that was great. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was
Little
hilarious.
baby just hissing at me.
So funny, man. So damn funny. I love it. All right. Any others, Tim, or was that all you got today?
No, man, that was it. Thanks so much for all the information. And also just thanks for always being a resource. Like
Oh, yeah.
I never getting irritated with I'm sure you get, if it's just my questions times, hundreds, your patience with it is amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, man. I mean, you guys are too nice. Thankfully, look, it's true. There are definitely times when I get questions from people that are like really rude or whatever, but 99% of the time, it's just people who are trying to do better for their animal or trying, you know what I mean? And I'll try my best to answer every single one of them. Now, the only ones I don't respond to is when people just send me a message that just says how much, or a message that just says anything available with no other context. I just ignore those. But it's way easier to ignore than it is to be rude. You know what I mean? I don't want to be rude to people. Sometimes it's going to happen. Sometimes it's just part of it. You can't I can't control everything. And then as you said, when you're dealing with a certain number of messages, every now and again, you're just going to lose your patience or whatever. But I try to keep that to about as minimum as possible. And then, of course, with you guys, I don't even think twice about it because you guys are all, I've met all of you and we've talked a bunch of times and you guys are super cool, super friendly. And it's obvious that you're just trying to do better for your animals. So I'm never going to be a jackass to any of you guys, or at least I can hope I don't. God, if I ever do.
It'd probably be deserved.
No way, no way, no way. No way. You guys are great. I don't think that's the case. I will say there was someone else, just forgive me for calling you out, but Brian, I saw you had your hand raised earlier and then you took it down. Did you have a question? I don't want you to be shy, but I also don't want to call you out.
You're good. You're good. It's my first time here. Nice to meet you, man. You're the man.
Hey, thanks.
So yeah, my question was, I spot clean every day, but how often do you change the substrate?
Great question. Excuse me. So, this is gonna vary just a little bit. So, it depends on what you're using. So, since I'm using mostly just stone, it's mostly just gravel and a little bit of sand. I don't have to change the substrate that much at all. So, we're talking once a year, maybe once every other year is how often, because and it happens in different. Okay, so let me elaborate on this and try to make clear. I'm not suggesting that anybody else do this exactly the way I'm doing it, but all of my cages, as you might know, Brian, are totally open top, and they're covered. It's just gravel and sand on the bottom with maybe some stones and stuff, right? So that means that when they defecate on that stuff, it dries out right away and it stays pretty damn dry. I don't get much retention of humidity or moisture, very little chance of fungal or mold growth in my cages. What I will do sometimes is I will get into the cage because a lot of my animals have cages that are sufficiently sized so they'll go to the bathroom in the same place. So I'll go over there, and if I feel like the cage is getting exceptionally dirty, I'll scoop out that whole area where they defecate and replace it with fresh gravel in that one spot. So it's not as if I have a set schedule where I go around every X number of months, pull out all the substrate that's in the cages, and then replace it fully. Another thing that I'll do a lot is because it's just gravel, I will go around with chlorhexidine which is a cleaning solution, but it's real gentle. And I'll go around and I'll spray a diluted chlorhexidine all over the bed. I'll take all the furnishings out and I'll spray the whole bedding down, and I'll just kind of soak it with a little bit of chlorhex, and then I'll mix it up, and then I'll replace all the stuff. And that helps kind of, I mean, it's probably not, I probably shouldn't tell people to do that because I'm not exactly, I don't know what that's doing to the bacteria in the cage, but my assumption is that it's kind of helping keep some of that bacterial population down. And Chlorhex is pretty mild. It's like, when you get, like, if you get your wisdom teeth out, they'll often give you Chlorhex to rinse your mouth out. You know what I mean? And you shouldn't like drink it, but it's not going to hurt you. It's a pretty low toxicity stuff. So I don't think it's a problem to kind of spray the cage a little bit with it now and again. But I think if you wanted like a more hard and fast rule, I would say if you can, change your bedding out as often as possible. If you can do it every 6 months, awesome. But if it's more like if you have a huge cage and using a lot of bedding and a lot of dirt, you can make it a little less often. And then I should also say, I can't remember exactly where this came from. I don't remember if it was a podcast. It might have been like Reptiles and Research, or it might have been on another show. I'm going to kick myself because I can't remember. But basically, there was a guy who was talking about how, there's all these conceptions that if you have a certain kind of bedding, you're going to get a lot of bacterial and nasty growth. And yeah, with stuff like cypress mulch and sphagnum moss and cocoa fiber and some of this stuff, yeah, you're going to get certain bacterial development in that bedding, right? But with stuff that's just rock, like just gravel and a little bit of sand, this guy was talking about how they would have bedding that's been in there for a year, and they would test it. They would look at it, kind of culture it and see what's in there. And there's nothing in there, So again, I should be really, really clear about this. I'm not suggesting that anybody not change the bedding in their cage, right? But just try to maybe do it on a schedule that seems best for you, unless you're getting smells, unless you're seeing mold growth, then you got to change the whole thing out. You don't want any mold in the cage at all. So you can clean it that way. And depending on what kind of bedding you're using, so like in Tim's case, for example, he's using the Slate. There, you don't need to change that at all. You just need to spray it down or clean it, keep it relatively clean, and it never needs to be changed. It's just stone. And so if gravel is kind of the same thing, it's just stone, it's just more of it. So does that make sense, Ryan?
Yes, sir. Thank you, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. No problem. Anything else?
That'll be all for me.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. All right. Well, let's see. Anybody else? Oh, I see Dave popped in. Hey, Dave, how you doing, man?
I'm upset that I don't look at my emails on Saturdays. And time.
Oh, no.
I missed last time as well. So I would just say, hey, they're doing it. I'm on. And,
nice.
Missed it all. You probably finished.
Oh, well, but that's, what? So I don't know. I think I put this in one of my, excuse me. I think I put this in one of my posts, but Patreon has now made it so I can upload video directly to the site. So that means that that's actually a huge benefit for me, because I hate using YouTube as a middleman. It drives me crazy, because even if I make like an unlisted video, I can share that link with you guys, and then that link can get out into the wild and anybody can go check it out. And if I want to make something specifically for you guys, kind of makes it a bit of a problem. But now, because I can upload directly to Patreon, I don't have to worry about that. So this is going to be a test. So sometime this week, I'm going to take this Q&A and upload it to Patreon as a test to see how it works. And I can say, here's the Q&A if y'all missed it. So hopefully that'll change it. And then I know I need to upload some of the others. It's just that.
Yeah. It's gonna be good. I was like driving during the one 2 times ago, and there were specific questions about naturalistic keeping and as close to bioactive as possible. I'm really interested in that. I have the 4 that I got from you. They're completely basic right now. And then the one I had before, I'm trying to he's got isopods, right? he's got some stuff, but I don't know if he's bioactive. But
Yeah.
I know I was kind of like in and out and missed that. I was able to watch that one on YouTube. I think you posted that one on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
Maybe number 5. I think I
so,
saw
yeah.
that one.
Yeah,
I think last time I missed altogether. I have lots of questions about it. I watched your video about, I feel like the one I just popped on and was listening to is probably exactly the same kind of thing where you're talking about gravel and stone are the same thing. So I'm excited about it. I don't want to belabor it, but I feel like I don't know if I'm like hitting all of the hot points that I want to be hitting. I feel like that post you put on Patreon a couple days ago about areas of microclimate, right? I don't know if I'm getting that the way I want to, so I'm interested to hear more and more about that as possible. But I think the bigger space you have and the more light you have to arrange, I guess, is the way it works. So my guys are not in the biggest enclosures yet, so it's a work in progress. They're still babies, So eventually they'll have, I envision 6x2x2s at least.
Right.
And I know you do something completely different and open and probably better. But anyway, I missed it all, but I'm excited. I'll watch it for sure on Patreon when you post it. I know that I love these things. They're very informative for me.
Nice. Yeah, me too. Sorry.
All right. Well, no worries. I told you this personally, so I'll have you. I just really appreciate your passion. I've watched all your stuff, and you can tell when somebody loves what they're doing, and I just really like that. So I've told you that personally, but I know all these people that are on here right now feel the same way. So I appreciate what you do, man.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate that, Dave. It's very kind of you.
All right.
I'm really, really glad that you guys all get something from this because I get something from it too. Every time we do one of these sessions, I leave and I'm like energized. I'm like, yeah, let's go. Euros. Makes me even more psyched. So thank you.
Well, I was at my local reptile show today, and I saw some Euros, and I thought they're cool looking.
Yeah.
I know where I get my Euros though, so here we are.
What kind were they?
Mostly Ornata. That's what people sell.
There was
I saw one Niggervensis, I think. And then of course a couple of those, and then of course there's a guy that had several Egyptians. Tiny little tubs that they were going to get 700 times bigger than they were, and my daughter looks at this one and says, "What? Is that how big it gets?" I said, "No, it gets a lot bigger than that."
Yeah.
And I can't imagine, looking at that vendor, I can't imagine he's giving much good husbandry information. But what are you going to do, right?
Yeah, it's just part of it. It's just part of the game. I know that another group of Ornata just landed in the U.S., like another import group, because every time they land, somebody, and like a lot of the wholesalers will call me and ask me if I want any, and I'm like, no, I'm good. Like I've had to, right? Like sometimes I got to bring in more imports because I need basically I got to make sure that I get enough Ornata here to have a colony that will succeed going forward. So the more genetic diversity I have, the better. But I'm at a point now where I have a lot of Ornata. I have a shit ton of ornates, and I can't take on any more. I just can't. Otherwise, I'll have to sacrifice all these other projects. So I had to say no.
To me, it's crystal clear. My Giri, which I bought at a show, and he was a sub-adult, wild caught. You can just tell he won't have anything to do with me, right? If I'm lucky, I can catch him and get him to maybe take a bite of lettuce out of my hand.
Nice.
And those 4 Ornatas I bought from you, they love seeing me come up.
Oh yeah.
They like to be handled. They are willing to be handled.
Yeah.
And I hold them and feed them before I hang their whole piece of lettuce off a rock like I've been taught to do. I like to hold them in my hand and let them take a couple of bites, and we bond. So I'm a huge proponent of that captive bred. I'm getting there, so I appreciate it.
Hell yeah, man.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you so much, Philip. I'll look forward to being on time next time.
Oh, hey, thanks, man. Yeah, it'll be good to have you from the start next time. Thank you again, Dave.
All right, thanks, bro. Take care.
All right, guys. Let's see what we got here. Oh, hey, thanks, Michael. Appreciate it, dude. Have a good one, Mike. Thanks for stopping by. Glad you could make it for this. We'll do another one. All right, so now we're at about an hour 20. So are there any last minute questions before we wrap this one up for the day? All right. So I guess that's a no. All right, sweet. Well, let me hit the stop recording button